Turn your Bibles, if you would please, to 1 Kings chapter 18. I want to talk this morning again about a most famous story in the Bible. We'll look at it again from a different perspective a little bit. See what God has for us. The title of this message this morning is When is Enough? When is enough? Now this is a story when Elijah brings fire down from heaven. Again, I reiterate, it's one of the most famous stories in the Bible, but I want to look at it from a different perspective here this morning again. Make application for us this morning. So I want to begin with verse 1 because I want to catch us up. I'm reading from the NIV because it's more in story form. Because it's kind of a story. And Ahab was the king at this particular time. Again, in 1 Kings chapter 18. Ahab was the king, and Ahab was did more evil than all the other previous evil kings before him. So Ahab was a really wicked, evil player. And because of his wickedness, the land of Israel, Samaria, Judea, was under a great famine, and the people were severely oppressed. And so Elijah was the prophet, the main prophet of that time. So we pick it up now, chapter 18, beginning with verse 1, the story. And after a long time, in the third year, that's the third year of the famine, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, said, "Go and present now yourself to Ahab." Elijah and Ahab had a rift going on. They had a rift between each other. Okay? They wanted nothing to do with each other. And now God is telling Elijah, go present yourself to Ahab. Now that's another story. That's another sermon. Just in that right there. So we'll get to that when we can. Okay? But for this morning, let's move on. "And I will send rain," the Lord says, "on the land." So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab had summoned Obadiah, who was in charge of his palace. So Obadiah worked for Ahab. Okay? But Obadiah was a devout believer in the Lord. So he was like, let's say he was a Christian. He was a Christian working for a wicked man. Right? So he was employed. Verse 4. "Now while Jezebel was killing off the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and then had supplied them with food and water. So Ahab had said to Obadiah, 'Go through the land to call the springs and valleys. Maybe we can find some grass to keep the horses and mules alive, so we will not have to kill any of our animals.' So they divided the land, and they went to cover, Ahab going in one direction and Obadiah in another." Verse 7. "As Obadiah was walking along, Elijah met him. Obadiah recognized Elijah and bowed down to the ground and said, 'It is really you? Is it you, my lord Elijah?' 'Yes,' he replied. 'Go tell your master, Ahab, that Elijah is here.'" Oh, that's bad news. Again, that's another sermon. But we'll keep going. "What have I done?" Now Obadiah is freaked out because if he goes and tells his employer that the one that he hates the most is going to now come and see him, then he'll get killed. Let's read it. "So what have I done wrong?" asked Obadiah, "that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to be put to death? As surely as the Lord your God lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation or kingdom claimed that you were not there, he made them swear they could not find you. But now you're telling me to go to my master and say Elijah is here? I don't know where the Spirit of the Lord may carry you when I leave you. And if I go and tell Ahab and he doesn't find you, he's going to kill me. Yet I, your servant, have worshipped the Lord since my youth. Don't you know that? Haven't you heard, my Lord, what I did while Jezebel was killing the prophets of the Lord? I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water, for crying out loud. And now you're telling me to go to my master and say Elijah's here? He's going to kill me. Now again, that's another sermon. But poor Obadiah, right? He's going to kill me. Verse 15. I love Elijah because he has no concern for Obadiah's feelings. Again, another sermon. And Elijah said, as the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, I will surely present myself to Ahab today. Oh, man. Oh, boy. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. Verse 17. And when he saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you, you troubler of Israel? Now see, Ahab blamed Elijah for all the problems in the land. Ahab didn't want to take any responsibility or accountability on his own for messing things up, for being wicked and being vile and being evil. So he's blaming all the problems on Elijah. They hate each other. They don't want anything to do with each other. Elijah's just waiting for God to tell for God to tell him that he can, assassinate Ahab. But he can't until God tells him, because Ahab's placed there by God. You see? But boy, this rift is going on. And now they meet, and Ahab says, you troubler, you troublemaker. Sounds a lot like today, folks, I'm telling you what. Verse 18. I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied, but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. You see, folks, Elijah had enough. Elijah had enough. The title of this message is, When is Enough? The question embeds us as Christian people, as the body of Christ, you as an individual, when is enough is enough? When do we look around at our world today, at circumstances and situations? When is individual Christian people going to say, enough? When are you or I in a given circumstance in our homes or with family or relatives or whoever it might be? When is enough enough? When do we say? When do we approach somebody that we love? And in love and in kindness and in sincerity, when do we say to them, enough? This is enough. This behavior is enough. Enough already. I had a conversation with my son the other day with our granddaughter, and she's involved in this sport, and she's playing, and there are issues. And my emotions kind of got a hold of me a little bit. With the boys, it's like with the boys, it's, it just get tough. But when they bully the girl, that kind of goes all over me. And I just kind of got on my son, and I just said, enough! You got to take care of this, because Grandpa can't take it anymore. Okay? Enough! It is enough! When are we going to look at the world? When are we going to look at our political state? When are we going to say enough? When are we going to look at our society, our community? When are we going to say enough? Some things have happened in Linda's life, on her, and you know what it is, and on me and on us, and it's just enough. When are you going to say to something, circumstance in your life, enough? And get a hold of God, and now it's time to take to the battle. Can you say amen? Amen. Folks, let me just get political just for a second, because it affects all of us. Okay? I'll tell you something. And this is not, and they call themselves socialists. We have socialists running for the presidency of the United States in 2 years. And actually, most of them are running for the presidency in 2024. But right now, the next one coming up is 2020. And they're socialists. They call themselves socialists. Okay, so this is not degrading anybody or being negative or calling anybody negative. They call themselves socialists. And folks, I'm here to tell you, listen to this now. If the majority of Americans in the United States of America vote into office, into the presidency of our great country, a socialist, either in 2020, I don't think that's going to happen, but when 2024 rolls around, if a socialist ever takes residence in the White House capital of the United States of America, God will become extinct. He's almost already extinct. But God will become extinct in the White House, in the Capitol, in Congress. And the movement is already taking place. And when are preachers going to preach to their congregations? Enough! When are Christians going to see the signs of the times and say enough? Now I've got an answer for the enough. I'll get to it in just a moment. But right now I want to challenge us. Challenge us to understand that here Elijah is now pressed by this evil one. Folks, there is no religion on earth right now that is more condemned and more afflicted than Christianity.
Yeah, that's right.
And especially if you are a white, straight, male Christian, you are the scum of the earth. And it keeps getting pounded at us, pounded at us, pounded at us, pounded at us, pounded at us. And white men that are listening to me right now, when y'all going to say in your own hearts and your own minds, enough?
Amen.
And take the battle to the enemy in prayer. Can you say amen?
Yes, amen.
Let's go on. Verse 20. So Ahab sent word throughout all of Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Now before I continue, let me just give us a couple specific circumstances that has to speak to us that enough is enough. An epidemic in our society right now, at the lowest age, even at age 4, at age 4, little boys and little girls are being diagnosed with acute depression and being given huge amounts of narcotics. At age 4. What should a 4-year-old child do when a 4-year-old child wakes up? Wake up, eat breakfast as fast as they can, make a mess, maybe watch a couple cartoons, and then go play. Play with the trucks, go ride their bicycle, go play with the dolls, go play house, go do whatever. Go outside, go explore, go run around, play with the dog, play with the cat. But instead, our little 4-year-olds now are becoming more and more acutely depressed. Check this out. Smartphones really came on the scene in 2007. And since 2007, suicide rates amongst teenagers have begun to skyrocket. Right now, suicide amongst teenagers is an epidemic. Listen to this now. The average age, new statistics, the average age of a person who acquires a smartphone is 10.3 years of age. 10.3 years of age. And we know that if a person, especially a child before the age of 24 to 28, because we know now that the brain continues to grow through the early 20s and into the mid-20s. It continues to grow. We know now that if a child spends more than like 20 hours a week FaceTime, that their brains actually begin to shrink. They lose their ability to reason. They lose their ability to translate information. They lose their ability for judgment. Their ability to know if it's left or right or wrong, or black or white, or whether it's high or short, or deep or shallow, or wide or narrow. They lose those cognitive skills. And now we're putting those poisons into the hands of 10-year-olds. When is enough enough? We'll give mothers health care. But now, if we don't want the newborn baby, if she doesn't want the newborn baby to live, we'll kill it for her. When is enough enough? Sure, the economics of our country right now is at a pinnacle. It's great. If you're an investor into the stock market, you're doing really, really well. If you're a CEO, you're doing really, really well. If you're involved in some other financial situation, you're doing really, really well. If you're in manufacturing, you're doing really, really well. While fewer and fewer people go to church. While more and more young people commit suicide. While the epidemic of now drug addiction is rampant and is now an epidemic. Drug addiction and suicide are the two things that right now are the greatest concern. Listen to the news, listen to politicians. Do they ever address those needs? No! What they're mostly concerned about is the environment and the weather patterns, for crying out loud. God reserves for himself and only himself to destroy the earth. And until God destroys the earth is going to take care of itself.